strengthening our cash reserves and balancing the budget. Number two, I want to once again call on the legislature to pass several initiatives important to the people of Iowa. These initiatives are related to education, healthcare, renewable energy, and the environment. They include passing legislation to expand Iowa's Model Core curriculum, expanding access to college through Senior Year Plus, and creating a new science, technology, engineering, and math center at the University of Northern Iowa. Passing legislation to expand health care to Iowa's children, and passing healthcare initiatives such as covering pre-existing conditions and increasing the age to 25 of coverage for dependent children. We also want to pass legislation to increase the use of renewable energy by setting a new renewable energy standard of 25% by 2025. And finally, passing legislation to expand and modernize Iowa's bottle bill to include more than 330 million bottles and sports drinks currently not covered. The third issue I want to discuss today is the Chapter 20 reform debate currently taking place in the legislature. As governor, I've made improving the lives of working Iowans a top priority. Whether it was increasing the minimum wage, paying Iowa teachers what they deserve, expanding access to health care, or working to attract more than 8,000 quality jobs to Iowa, I am committed to ensuring Iowa's workers are treated fairly, and I'm fighting to improve their quality of life too. I want to also say we could not have done any of this without strong bipartisan support in the legislature, and for that I am grateful. In my condition of the state address this year, I said that we should not be afraid to debate difficult labor management issues. This includes the debate currently taking place in the legislature. While I believe it is healthy to discuss important issues, such as collective bargaining, I have serious concerns about the speed at which this bill was moved through the legislature. It is simply common sense to allow the public time to weigh in as the legislature considers changing Iowa's collective bargaining law for the first time in more than 30 years. In 1974, Republicans and Democrats were able to work together on collective bargaining legislation that ultimately improved the lives of Iowa's workers. Lieutenant Governor Judge and I have expressed our concerns to legislative leadership over the past week, and again yesterday. Clearly, our concerns were not new. I am disappointed our concerns were not addressed, and the bill was pushed through anyway. I appreciate the fact a motion to reconsider was filed, which will offer us some time to take a look at the bill and see if a consensus can be reached. The motion to reconsider was a step in the right direction. However, I want to be clear, there is a strong possibility that I will veto this bill if a real effort to listen to the concerns of Iowans, local elected officials, and government stakeholders at all levels does not take place. As I've said before, a real effort to reach a consensus must be made, and I stand ready, along with the Lieutenant Governor, to do my part. Thank you, and I'll be happy to answer questions. We have had an ongoing dialogue with the legislative leaders, and we expect that will continue. We will be talking to them later today.
What about the bill concerns you most?
I think as much as anything, just the process that was used. You're talking about a 6-day period of time. We were first seen, my administration didn't have a chance to look at the amendment until last Tuesday. And so we share concerns about the process. I was the one that raised the important issue of expanding Chapter 20 in my State of the State address this January. And I specifically talked about my hope that we could expand it to include things like discipline and discharge. So I have been a proponent of fighting for workers' rights. How far we go, what kind of consensus we can reach, what type of real practical implication that has at the state and the local level, that's what we have to discuss.
Is there some portions of the bill you object to, or the provisions in the bill you don't like, you can modify it?
Well, I think, you have to understand there are 17 current sections within the collective bargaining law. There are now 7 additional pieces that have been added to that. So there's a lot there. And it's possible that we can reach consensus on a fair amount of it, if not potentially all of it. But that's the discussion that we have with the input of those that will be affected by it.
What's your reaction to Senator Grunsel's comment that once you read and understand the bill, get up to speed on it, that you will sign it? What's your reaction to that?
I've read and I understand the bill, which is why I'm here today.
Was that, is that the extent of your action? I mean, was that kind of a out of order, you think? It seemed like he was pointing out the fact that you were on vacation, maybe out of touch, out of the loop.
He was just wrong about that.
Well, Governor, the bill is already passed, so what would qualify in your mind as reaching consensus? It would be unusual for the legislature to conduct a public hearing on legislation that they've already passed. What are you really looking for?
I'm looking for a thorough discussion and dialogue on this important issue. And I'm hoping that we can find common ground and that we can continue to get input from those that have a stake or an interest in this legislation. And we can do whatever we think we need to do before we adjourn to make changes, to make modifications, to start over. A lot of different ways with time left in the session to make this legislation something that we can all support.
One of the most controversial measures in this would allow class size to be a subject of bargaining. Is that something that you're in favor of or opposed?
I'm not going to get into the particulars right now. I've talked about my support for expanding Chapter 20. I've talked about my support for standing up and fighting for workers and teachers and others in this state. And we need to have a discussion right now about how far we're willing to go.
Did you get a heads up from legislative leaders that they can move this last week?
Not until Tuesday.
Who are the stakeholders that you're most interested in hearing from? That you don't think have been heard from?
Well, you have officials at every level, city, county, you've got school districts, you've got executive branch, every stakeholder. There are a lot of people that will potentially be affected by this. I look forward to hearing from teachers, from superintendents. That's how the process should work. That's how it's working on healthcare, on environmental issues, on education. We're having a thorough discussion and debate about things like modernizing the bottle bill. We've been talking about that now for 3 months. Where can we find consensus on that issue? I want to expand it. I've been told that we're limited on how far some want to expand it. Well, let's talk about what we can do. This issue shouldn't be any different.
How realistic is it to find